Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The Commerce Department reports the U.S. economy grew 4.3% in the third quarter, topping expectations. What's driven the uptick? A significant change in America's skies. The FCC is planning to ban the next generation of Chinese-made drones, citing them as a national security risk. A U.S. Navy fact sheet says the Trump-class battleships will be the most lethal warship to be ever built. President Trump is positioned to continue his immigration policy in the new year with billions in new funding. We take a look at his policies. The FDA has approved a daily pill version of the weight loss drug Wegovy, making it the first GLP-1 pill to be cleared by regulators for obesity. What the decision means for the U.S. market. The Trump administration is tackling immigration from another angle. It is now revisiting the H-1B visa program.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Top story today, the U.S. economy grew 4.3% in the third quarter, driven by consumer spending, exports, and government spending. And that's the fastest pace in 2 years. That follows a 3.8% expansion in the second quarter. Before the official report, the Atlanta Federal Reserve estimated 3.5% growth for the July to September period. And consumer spending rose to a 3.5% annual pace last quarter, up from 2.5%. There was a rush to buy electric vehicles before the September 30th expiration of tax credits. Exports grew at 8.8%, while imports fell 4.7%. The new GDP data was delayed by the 43-day government shutdown. In a social media post, President Trump said the tariffs are responsible for what he called the great numbers, adding, quote, "They will only get better."
Fantastic report, 4.3%. It's just about as good as GDP numbers get. And especially coming, on the heels of the CPI report, Consumer Price Index report we got, which you actually showed some interesting data that it's consistent with, that showed that core inflation is all the way down to 1.6%. And so I think that these numbers are showing that President Trump's trade policy and his supply side policy, which is really increasing new factory production and so on, is having a big effect, as is his trade policy. So if we abstract from the reduction of the trade deficit, then the 4.3% number would only be 2.6%. So Trump's trade policy is really working as well.
The Trump administration will slap tariffs on Chinese semiconductor imports, but they won't kick in until June 2027. Here's more.
The Office of the Trade Representative says the rate will be announced at least a month in advance. Such imports currently enjoy 0% duties. The announcement comes following a Section 301 investigation into Chinese chips launched by the Biden administration. The U.S. Trade Representative concluding in its report that China's targeting of the semiconductor industry for dominance is unreasonable. It says China is increasingly aggressive with non-market policies and practices. The report says that such targeting disadvantages U.S. commerce and thus requires further action. The decision to delay the tariffs until 2027 comes amid a tariff truce between the U.S. and China.
A new rule by the Federal Communications Commission essentially bans the next generation of Chinese-made drones. Here's more.
The drones have dominated U.S. skies for years. They're used for things like infrastructure and construction inspection, crop monitoring, professional and amateur video production, and even finding lost children and pets. However, since 2017, the foreign-made drones have been deemed a risk to national security. Now, the FCC has banned the import, sale, and use of all new drones made by foreign manufacturers, including the world's largest drone maker, DJI. The FCC said an executive branch group concluded those drones were capable of surveillance, gathering data, and conducting destructive operations here in America, and that its decision to ban them is based on that. The FCC ban does not include foreign-made drones currently in use or already approved for sale. Back in June, President Trump signed an executive order to speed up domestic drone production.
As we near the beginning of a new year, let's take a look back at one vital subject that Congress is working to address: the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more on the moves Congress has made to stand up to the CCP over the past year.
The Chinese Communist Party presents the greatest threat to American values and American national security in our lifetime.
Congress has taken some strides this year to crack down on the Chinese Communist Party, and it's one of the few issues that we see bipartisanship in the legislature. In the most recent case, Congress's new $900 billion defense budget legislation prohibits the Pentagon from purchasing equipment from blacklisted Chinese biotech companies.
Well, there's a lot of things that the American government is using that they probably should not be using. It varies from everything from Chinese-made routers to drones. Hundreds of, maybe even thousands of apps that directly say that they're sending American data from your phone over to mainland China.
The Pentagon's budget also ramps up defense in the Pacific region to deter CCP aggression towards Taiwan.
Xi has ordered the People's Liberation Army to be ready to take Taiwan by force by 2027.
That's as the CCP is conducting the largest military buildup since World War II. And earlier this month, President Trump signed the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act, requiring the State Department to update its guidelines for U.S. engagements with Taiwan at least every 5 years. And it's designed to deepen the relationship between the two countries in the absence of formal diplomatic relations. And earlier this year, members of Congress were calling out this hot mic moment between CCP leader Xi Jinping and Russia's President Vladimir Putin, where Xi says that one can live to 150 years old through continuous organ transplants. And that's while the CCP is engaged in forced organ harvesting.
We've heard some horrific stories of these organ transplants and all of this in China, that they take it from unwilling donors, okay, to put it mildly. And the fact that they were caught on a hot mic, first I've heard of that, is very telling. It tells you where their worldview is in contrast to ours. Speaking of evil.
To address this, the House passed the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act and Falun Gong Protection Act in May, which would put sanctions on anyone facilitating the practice.
In China, there's no waiting list for organs. So what that means is there's a ready supply. There's a ready supply because they take them from healthy, living people, particularly these folks that practice the religion of Falun Gong.
Now, these are just a few of the several pieces of legislation that were passed in the House, but most continue to await action in the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
A Brooklyn federal judge declared a mistrial yesterday in a case alleging that a former top aide to two New York governors used her position to push Beijing's agenda. Take a look.
Prosecutors accused Linda's son of illegally acting as an agent of the Chinese regime at the highest levels of state government in exchange for millions of dollars. Son's husband, Chris Hu, was accused of laundering millions of dollars from Chinese officials through his export business. The couple was accused of using the money to fund luxury cars, designer handbags, and million-dollar estates, while son's salary never reached more than $145,000, and Hu reported little income from his business. A panel of 20 jurors had sent Judge Brian Cogan several notes last week, saying it couldn't agree on the various felony charges that Son and her husband faced. The U.S. Attorney's Office says that it plans to bring the couple to a trial a second time. Prosecutors can retry a case after a mistrial is declared due to a hung jury, as no verdict was ultimately reached.
Today, President Trump said he had spoken with the presidents of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. He said he had invited both leaders to the G20 summit next year in Miami, Florida. In a Truth Social post, Trump said the leaders had discussed ongoing conflicts and trade. Trump called the U.S. relationship with both countries spectacular. The G20 is made up of 19 nations, as well as the European Union and the African Union. The group meets annually. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, G20 countries account for 85% of global economic output and about 2/3 of the world's population. And the Department of Justice is suing the local government of Washington, D.C. over alleged restrictions on certain semi-automatic weapons, saying that they go against Second Amendment rights. The DOJ filed a lawsuit yesterday, naming D.C.'s Metropolitan Police and outgoing Chief of Police Pamela Smith as defendants. According to the lawsuit, the DOJ says that D.C. has established a pattern of ignoring the 2008 Supreme Court decision in Heller versus the District of Columbia. The High Court decided in that case that the Second Amendment protects the rights of individuals to keep guns in their homes for self-defense. According to the Metropolitan Police Department website, their list of banned firearms, including machine guns and assault rifles, are deemed unsafe by the Firearms Regulation Act of 2008. This is the latest clash between the federal government and D.C., following a federal law enforcement intervention in the nation's capital over the summer. Attorneys general from 21 Democratic-led states and the District of Columbia have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. They're seeking to block the administration's effort to defund the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The plaintiffs argue that the administration's position is unconstitutional and undermines Congress. The states contend that without funding, the agency will not be able to fulfill its obligations. The CFPB was created under President Barack Obama in 2011 following the 2008 financial crisis. Unlike most agencies, it draws funds directly from the Federal Reserve's combined earnings instead of annual congressional appropriations. President Donald Trump has called for the dismantling of the Bureau since January. White House Budget Chief and acting CFPB Director Russell Vought has halted most agency operations. President Trump is positioned to continue his immigration policy in the new year with billions in new funding. Joining us to look back at the administration's actions on immigration is Mike Leon, host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So first of all, good to see you guys. Thank you so much for coming. And Tony, I want to talk to you first. You know, we reported yesterday that the administration removed over 600,000 illegal immigrants so far, while another 1.9 million have self-deported. And some reports have suggested that mass deportations could hurt Trump's economic goals. So I want to ask you here, has there been a notable negative impact on the labor market and the overall economy with these deportations?
Well, first of all, good afternoon to you both and Merry Christmas. What an excellent year to be doing these routine hits on NTD with you both. Really enjoy them. They're the highlight of my week. I apologize. I want to answer the question. Just had to right off the bat. So in regard to these particular immigration policies, there is some internal schisms right now within the Department of Homeland Security. We just interviewed a member of the Oversight Project on some of the desire for more deportation that I think the Trump administration is going to have to look at in the next year. 600,000 is rather below what was promised to the American people. Of course, we saw earlier on in the polling that Americans were more in favor across the board with more mass deportation. As to the economic impact of deportation, whether it be at the hands of Immigration Customs Enforcement or self-deportation, I'll say this. I am less concerned about the gross economic impact than I am about the moral implications of using illegal immigrant labor in a way that tries to defraud the system. The idea that you should pay someone who is here less because they are skirting the system or they are using illegal documents like social security numbers belonging to someone else, that's wrong. I think that immigration into this country should be easier legally, and that, of course, we should have individuals who are in the system legally, not just for their own protection, which is extremely important, but so that labor owners and supervisors can be held to account of practices that are often unseemly. I think of the marijuana farm in California that was using child labor and had armed guards. That's not fair. I don't think that that's something that's appropriate. A green card program, however, where individuals honor a labor program effectively, that I think is more supported.
Okay, Mike, so Tony says moral considerations is more important than perhaps economic considerations. What are your thoughts on this subject, Mike?
Yeah, well, good to see you guys both, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas as well. Well, I mean, if you look at where I live in Florida, right, construction industry down here relies on a lot of immigrant labor. Like, let's be honest, right? And I know people that work in the construction industry all up and down the state. They've been impacted by this. And why have they been impacted by this? Because, again, for a lot of people that didn't understand during the election cycle and everyone seeing the mass deportation signs, what did it mean when the administration came in January? It meant that there was a change to immigration law. What used to be a civil in nature offense is now been deemed criminal. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, Don, without talking about the economic impact, because I think that's still to be determined depending upon what ends up happening in 26 with their goals with respect to deportation, what ends up happening with respect to the makeup of the House and Senate as we go into 27. So I think all of those long-term effects are still kind of TBD. Short-term, obviously, there are some industries that do rely on, like Tony said, immigrant labor, skirting some of the rules and circumventing that they shouldn't be doing, to be honest. But outside of all of that, I think and outside of all of that, I think the biggest thing for me, speaking to a lot of immigration attorneys across the country, has been this change in information that their clients used to know. The procedures of this now don't know it, right? I have an order. I don't know what it means, but I got to go to court. I got to get an immigration attorney. I probably have to pay a fine. Now they're being, arrested after these hearings once they're adjourned. And so I think that type of change, that type of mix up, in addition to some other things that we can talk about that the DOJ has done in terms of hiring immigration judges to kind of speed up the process. And these folks don't have, while they may have a legal background, they don't have a legal background in immigration law. And that's a confusing thing as well. So I think the system right now has always been overwhelmed on an immigration front. It's always needed a revamping. I'm not in line with mass deportations like the way it's being administered. I am in line with, obviously, like what Tony said, of making the process a little bit smoother in terms of legal immigration and getting people to come in through the doors and having a vetting system and a process. But I think the way the administration has gone about it has created some confusion just from those in the legal community. Take my opinion outside of it. It's more coming from the immigration attorneys that are working on this every day and seeing this unfold.
So, Tony, can you just respond to that, including what Mike said, that some of these people are going to court and then being immediately arrested afterwards?
Yeah, so of course there are cases in which individuals are being arrested before or after. These have often been individuals that have violent convictions or accusations. A lot of individuals, I will say on top of this, in kind of contrast to the Trump administration's communication on who they are going after, the number of self-deportations has radically increased from prior administrations, which is, if we can just step aside and look at this in kind of the cosmic political way, how bizarre that the Obama and Biden administrations had more perhaps forced deportations where they sent in federal agents and they were picked up from perhaps local or state prisons or penitentiaries. And then you have the Trump administration, who's encouraged more self-deportation than any administration that I can find in the data. It's bizarre. It's kind of like the opposite as to what we were promised. And in that, though, I'll say this, with federal agents showing up to pick up individuals, where I live in Indiana, and then, of course, where Mike lives down in Florida, what you've seen is state governments that are participating and cooperating with federal governments or the federal government, which means they are essentially keeping individuals who have been held for violent crime, and then the government comes and picks them up. But in blue states, you often find in Minnesota, in California, in New York, and Illinois, where the federal agents have to find the illegal immigrants that have been convicted or have been charged with violent crimes. They then have to go into the neighborhood. And just like if I was at a party in which there were some illicit substances, if the cops bust in, I'm getting picked up too, because that's how police work happens. That's how it functions. And again, to kind of also touch on the construction point as well, we've done a lot of work on looking at construction companies that hire illegal immigrants for day labor, and have found not at the illegal immigrants' fault, but at the fault of the supervisor, that often it produces shoddy work because, hey, I mean, if you're not following labor laws, are you going to follow building codes and regulations as well? We're looking at this in Arizona, by the way, right now, not necessarily Florida, just to, preface that before Mike responds.
Okay, Mike, Tony said he found it bizarre that there's more self-deportations during the Trump administration versus previous administration. Why do you think that is? Why is the administration as well, we found out, tripling the incentive to $3,000 to self-deport?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the administration ran on. I mean, if you remember when they first came into office, they got rid of the CBP1 app, that allowed people to kind of schedule these visits so that way we would have less congestion that would come to the border. And once they scrapped that, right, and the technological advancements that made and how that operated, now what happens is that they've implemented this program. Kristi Noem, those have implemented this program where you can kind of self-deport. And before it was $1,000. Now they've, like you said, Don, they've tripled it to $3,000 right around this holiday season. And I think that's an incentive because of what people are seeing play out across media, which is the arrest of folks that are going about it, again, formally going about it the right way because it was civil in nature, appear at your court date, seek an attorney, pay a fine, fill out all this paperwork and things like that. So that way we have documented track of where you are, et cetera. Now it's a little bit different. Everyone is treated as a criminal that has either an order that is already, been ignored. Maybe they never got it, or maybe they just, like I said, ignored it, or to kind of Tony's point, right? Like the company that they're working at kind of like, oh, don't worry about that. We'll figure that out later on. So I think there's a financial incentive in it. I don't find it curious because I think if I was, putting myself in those shoes, even though my dad immigrated here from another country, like putting myself in those shoes, if I saw that playing around on a news loop and I knew I wasn't, papers wise all up to date and up to snuff here, or I hadn't spoken to an immigration
supposed to
attorney,
be here.
I know, exactly. I probably would do the same exact thing. You know what? Let me take advantage of this program before I end up in a detention center in a different state that I don't reside in, and my family can't get a hold of me, and then I'm shipped to the Sudan, which is ridiculous in and of itself, that entire sentence. So I think that's why you're kind of seeing a little bit more of that, Don. I mean, there's a financial incentive, and the administration can kind of at least say, look, we were giving people the chance to self-deport, and they're taking advantage of this program, and this is working out better than previous, to Tony's point, previous Democratic administrations did.
Okay, Tony, some groups have accused the Trump administration's immigration enforcement as, going too far, going beyond its limits, citing humanitarian. They're citing humanitarian concerns, human rights concerns, violating the rights of immigrants. Your response to that?
Yeah. So whenever I see this kind of a thing, I always say evidence, evidence, evidence. Show me the receipts. I am told there are all of these pregnant mothers and old men playing chess that are just sitting in the park enjoying a beautiful summer's day. They're just going about their job. They're just having a wonderful, good old time, and they're being scooped up by the Gestapo. And that's not true. And in fact, a lot of the individuals, the majority of individuals that have been picked up have been in this young male age, who are, again, in this country, not on all of these close family ties that have been suggested. I've been brought on, television against opponents who are nowhere near as competent, coherent, and honest as Mike is, to tell me instead that, well, that father that, attacked ICE agents with an on weed whacker, that with lawn equipment, that, well, he was just heartbroken and terrified and all of these other nonsensities here, that no, that is in fact not the case. I'm looking at the data, the data that is, some of it's being released. I think the entire process should be 100% transparent, as should all law enforcement activities in this case. But again, this comes down at the hand of what I'll dispute is Mike's argument as well. This used to just be a civil disagreement. If you were flying from, let's say, London to Rio, and you stop in the United States in Newark, and you step outside somehow, you teleport through the walls of Newark, and you're in the United States suddenly, yes, that's a civil violation. But when you stay here and you participate in the economic system, when you participate in the legal system of this country illegally, you evade federal agents because the majority of individuals aren't showing up for court cases. The court cases are pushed decades down the road that are being made today. It's a pretty severe crisis. You staple on that all of the state programs that are shoving hundreds of millions of dollars into problems that aren't looked at, that are taken advantage of by fraud. And that's a major concern for those who come into this country legally, Mike, in this case, like your dad, who are fleeing a country who went through that incredibly difficult process. And I think there's a lot of individuals in the legal immigrant situation that are kind of being left out of this conversation. And I want to clarify, I'm not trying to use your dad against you. I'm just, as I've talked about with you before, I admire the sacrifice that your dad made. And obviously, when you look at countries around the world, individuals fleeing, that's why I think the immigration system needs to be easier. It's not an excuse for bad communication, maybe, but it's a recognition that it's not as bad as the Gestapo line that's often trotted out.
I started with Tony, so I'll give you the last word here. Anything you have on your mind that you'd like to share, your response to Tony, and I want to ask you about the impact that courts have had on the administration's agenda.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot, and this is where Tony and I may differ, and then we may agree on one thing. So there's two things that Tony said. First, there's the media coverage of this. I do think that, as we said before, Obama deported the most people in history as any administration, right? And so the media coverage, especially from outlets that tend to lean left or are on the left side, like MS Now, formerly MSNBC, the coverage was a little bit softer, right? So there is a coverage of this. Everybody has a phone now, as opposed to in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and the technology advancements behind that. So now we're seeing heightened, videos of these arrests, and then we have to drill into the details. And we're hoping that journalists can do that kind of legwork to figure out if this person was truly here, legally, illegally, et cetera. So there is a heightened media coverage around it. But I will say, to take away from Tony's point, I mean, according to DHS and immigration's own numbers, 73% of these folks that have been part of these, sendbacks don't have a criminal conviction. They've never had a criminal record. Now, again, it goes back to what I said before, which is you are now a criminal in the eyes of the administration because of the tweak, where it used to be a civil offense and now it's a criminal offense. Now, in terms of what you were asking me, Don, to land the plane here, the immigration judge thing that I mentioned about the DOJ in October, and you can go check this out, and what they did in terms of hiring to expedite the process, 36 immigration judges, 25 temporary and 11 permanent. These are folks, and again, this is a high-profile immigration attorney that told me this, so I'm going to regurgitate what she said to me, which is that it's the equivalent of me presiding over a criminal case. Sure, I'm a lawyer, but that doesn't mean I know everything about criminal law. And so what's going to happen now is that you're going to have some confusion with respect to these judges that are either temporary or put in position of power to preside over these cases that have no background or no bases or knowledge in immigration law. There's a reason why when you go to law school, you pick your specialization of law, whether it be tort, criminal, civil, whatever it is. And so when we start to do that, in addition to the backlog that we already have of all of this, I think it's going to create a big cluster and clutter. I was going to use a cluster with an F word at the end of it, but I'll take that out. But we're going to create a big cluster right now for 26 and beyond. And I think that's going to be one of the things to watch out in the first half of 2026, Don, because we're already seeing some internal memos that have been released in terms of what the administration wants to do from an immigration enforcement standpoint. So it's going to be curious to see what happens with all of this as we get into 26, especially as the midterms are the backdrop of all this.
Right, let's leave it there for today. Many more chances likely to talk about this in the new year. And I just wanted to wish you both Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you both.
Thanks, Don. Happy holidays.
From a lottery system to prioritizing higher skills, the Trump administration has unveiled chances to change the selection process for H-1B visas. More news after this break.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
I'm Kevin Hogan, and on behalf of the NTD News Today team, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a joyous holiday season.
The Department of Education says it's reviewing safety at Brown University following the shooting on campus that killed 2 students. The department said officials are investigating whether school officials violated federal campus safety and security requirements. In addition, Brown University's president placed the campus police chief on leave. A former chief of the Providence Police Department will replace him. Brown's president said the university is deeply committed to campus safety and security. Police said the suspect entered a university building and fired at least 44 rounds, killing 2 students and wounding 9. He was later found dead in a storage rental facility in New Hampshire after a 5-day manhunt. As part of the investigation, the Education Department has asked Brown to submit extensive records by the end of January, including crime logs and security reports. The review will look at whether the school violated a law requiring certain campus safety measures as a condition for receiving federal funding. The Trump administration is revisiting the H-1B visa program. The Department of Homeland Security is amending regulations on the H-1B work visa selection process. In a release, the department explained that the selection process will prioritize high-skilled and higher-paid workers. DHS said this is to better protect the wages, working conditions, and job opportunities for Americans. The new rule will replace the random lottery for selecting visa recipients. There will be an annual limit of 65,000 H-1B visas. There will be an additional 20,000 for U.S. advanced degree holders. The rule goes into effect at the end of February. The Department of Justice is suing the governor of Illinois and the state's attorney general over 2 immigration laws passed in the state this year. One law prevents federal law enforcement officers from making arrests on the inside on the way to or returning from any Illinois courthouse. Officers in violation of the law may be held liable for civil damages. The other law allows residents to bring lawsuits against officers enforcing immigration laws in certain settings, including hospitals and schools, if the U.S. or state constitution is violated. The DOJ says the new laws threaten the safety of federal officers trying to enforce immigration laws. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy announced yesterday that the state of Colorado could lose up to $24 million in federal highway funding. This follows what Duffy describes as the state's slow response to purging illegally issued CDL driver licenses to non-citizens. An October audit demonstrated that approximately 22% of Colorado's CDLs were given to non-citizens, violating federal prohibitions. Beyond the funding freeze, Secretary Duffy also warned that Colorado's full CDL program could be decertified if the state does not meet federal requirements. Colorado's Division of Motor Vehicles paused new issuance and renewals of limited-term non-domicile CDLs last week and permits as well. The office said it will continue doing so until an audit confirms that U.S. standards are being met. Several other states have faced similar scrutiny, including New York, California, Pennsylvania, and Texas. The U.S. carried out another strike yesterday targeting drug runners in the waters off South and Central America. That's now the 29th strike. It was confirmed by U.S. Southern Command last night. Officials say the strike targeted a vessel operated by a designated terrorist organization in international waters and was carried out at the direction of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. According to Southern Command, intelligence confirmed the vessel was traveling along a known drug trafficking route in the Eastern Pacific and was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. The military said one male narco-terrorist was killed. President Trump has designated several cartels and similar criminal organizations as domestic terror groups. He says the attacks are part of his administration's effort to stop the influx of illicit drugs, especially fentanyl, into the country. Critics say such strikes are legally controversial and that anti-drug enforcement has historically been handled by law enforcement rather than the military. President Trump has unveiled plans yesterday to build a new class of battleships as part of his vision to strengthen the military. The so-called Trump-class ships will be part of the administration's vision for a golden fleet aimed at deterring U.S. adversaries like communist China.
As Commander-in-Chief, it's my great honor to announce that I have approved a plan for the Navy to begin the construction of two brand new, very large, the largest we've ever built, battleships. They'll help maintain American military supremacy, revive the American shipbuilding industry, and inspire fear in America's enemies all over the world.
President Trump made the announcement at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Palm Beach, Florida. He says the new warships will be the largest, with 100 times the force. The president also pushed to speed up ship manufacturing, saying he's planning to meet with major defense contractors next week to hash out the details. He said the plan is to begin with 2 ships, expand to 10, and eventually increase the total to between 20 and 25. In recent years, the U.S. has seen significant slowdowns in ship making. President Trump signed an executive order back in April ordering a government-wide reform to fast-track production. The U.S. hasn't built any battleships since World War II, with the last American battleship retiring in 1992. And joining us to discuss this further is Grant Newsham, retired U.S. Marine Colonel, former U.S. diplomat, and senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. So, Colonel, good afternoon to you. And according to a U.S. Navy fact sheet, it says that the battleships will be the most lethal warship to be ever built. The first 2 expected to be within operation in 2.5 years. Can you put into perspective how much more powerful will these ships actually be, these Trump-class battleships, compared to what the Navy has as of right now?
Well, if you put everything on it, it's going to have some new more modern kind of weapons, say lasers and railguns, but it's also just going to have missiles like a lot of ships have. But it's important to look at this in the broader context. It's not just these 2 ships, but rather this is a bigger effort by the president, by the administration, to expand the U.S. Navy, to build more ships. So he's talking now about building, say, 2025 of these so-called battleships. And these are just bigger ships with more weaponry than the current Burke-class destroyers. But he's also going to build a lot of smaller ships that you use for sort of the bread and butter operations and roles in a Navy. And these are based on an existing U.S. Coast Guard national security cutter models. These are smaller, less well-armed, but nonetheless have armament. But also in the plan is to build 49 support ships. These are transports, oil tankers, replenishment ships, the things that keep the warfighting ships out at sea and are essential. So this is part of a much broader scheme. I think the focus is perhaps a little too narrow on these 2 battleships and Mr. Trump declaring them or calling them battleships and people saying it's the Trump class. I think too much focus is going on that, but it's the bigger perspective that's required. And if this is the thing that revitalizes, indeed resuscitates the U.S. Navy's shipbuilding numbers and capabilities and commercial shipbuilding in the U.S., then it's a good thing. We will see.
Okay, then let's talk about the bigger picture here. When Trump's vision is fully realized, How do you think that's going to put the U.S. Navy's capacity, for conflicts to comparing to other nations' ability of their Navy?
Well, we're going to be hard pressed. What we've been sleeping, at least our uniformed admirals, the perfume princes, and high-level civilians have been sleeping for 25 years and allowed the Chinese to build up a very impressive Navy with about 350 warships, and they're turning them out rapidly. Well, we're stuck at about 290 or so, and we have to cover the whole world. The Chinese don't. So we've got to catch up. So even if everything that President Trump wants to do comes to pass, it's going to take some time, and the Chinese are not standing still. They have built an impressive Navy. It's limited in how far it can project power, but they intend to be a global military. Where we do have an advantage is if we could get our allies to be able to work better, operate better with us, and to actually be prepared to fight a war with us, we'd be in a lot better shape. For example, if you add in the 50, 60 ships in the Japanese Navy, well, that's a nice addition. The Australians, their 11 ships would be nice as well, maybe the South Koreans. So you put the free nation navies together and get them so that they can actually operate effectively. That changes the balance pretty well. But if it's just the U.S. versus the People's Liberation Army Navy, we've got a fight on our hand for some time to come. But if this is a change in really national willpower in the U.S. towards once again becoming a maritime nation like we've always been, then it's a good thing. But we've sort of dug ourselves into a hole, and now we have to get out of it.
So why do you think that is? Why do you say that the U.S. has dug itself into a hole? What has contributed to that? What is the reason? And what needs to be done in order to dig the U.S. out of it? Do you think with the U.S. with President Trump's vision that after it is fully realized that the U.S. would no longer be in this hole?
Well, if you go back about 25 years, remember when the Cold War ended, and the idea was the Americans, democracy won. We would never face any more enemies. There would be no real adversaries we had to worry about. So all we needed to do was build things like the Littoral Combat Ship, which was a piece of junk, basically. The Zumwalt class destroyer, which they produced exactly 2 of those. The Constellation class program that was canceled recently, the Ford carrier, aircraft carrier class that's had problems. It's been one disaster after another, and it appears as though leprechauns are responsible for it. But you'll notice that within the Navy and the hierarchy, nobody's been sort of called to account for one failure after another. So we thought that we didn't really face any threats. There were no urgencies. China wasn't an adversary, even was just going to be a competitor. And then you had on the business class where everything was return on investment. And U.S. commercial shipping industry, it declined to where, as I said, we're 200 times below or less than the Chinese have. So they're turning out ships a lot faster than us, military and commercial. Basically, the nation went insane, and people who were responsible for that are to blame. It's not supernatural forces. But now what you do is you catch your breath and you realize what we're capable of. And you are going to have to resuscitate our commercial shipbuilding industry and our military shipbuilding industry. This isn't hard. It just takes leadership, resources, and some money. And people say money's scarce. Well, there seems to be plenty that's around for fraud and being stolen elsewhere in the budget. But if it's national defense, the money's there if people want it. I don't expect Capitol Hill or Congress to be forking over much cash, but it will take some clear thinking, a recognition of the threat we do face from our adversaries, China, Russia, even North Korea. The Iranians have a few ships as well. But it does take a sense of urgency and leadership. And President Trump is the first president that I can remember who has actually addressed this issue head on. And now we'll see what his administration and what the Navy, both uniformed and civilian, can come up with, and whether the commercial ventures will actually step up as well. Maybe they will if they see some consistency coming from the government. But this idea that all that mattered was the lowest bid, and producing things anywhere on Earth didn't matter. Well, that's gotten us into an awful lot of trouble. There's only something like 70 or 80 American flag transport ships. There needs to be a lot more than that. So as I say, we're in trouble, but we've been in bigger fixes before, but we'd better hurry.
Has been advancing its naval capability. I'm just thinking here because, sorry, let me just say that again, Colonel. You said China has been advancing its naval capability. So I'm wondering here, because just last week, the U.S. announced the sale of the largest weapon package to Taiwan. Will these new battleships and Trump's vision, the announcement, is that going to increase the level of deterrence of a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan?
It could, but it mostly in the sense that it shows a will to actually defend yourself. Because all these ships that, the plans that have been announced by President Trump, by the Navy, these are going to take some time to actually expand numbers. But we do have a lot of hardware available, both at sea and in the air, and even on the ground, that would make life pretty miserable for the People's Liberation Army if it goes after Taiwan. But it is that the demonstration of will on the part of the United States that is as important as anything. The specific weapons that are being supplied to Taiwan, these are things that are very useful for a defense, and they are things that a Chinese invasion force would not want to have to deal with. You do need to get them quickly to Taiwan. So the more a country can defend itself, big country or small one, the more stabilizing that is. It tends to cause the schoolyard bullies to back off when they see that their intended victim is willing to fight back and give them a bloody nose, if not more.
Well, all right, Colonel, great insight as always. Thank you so much for coming on today, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you very much.
The FDA has approved a daily pill version of the weight loss drug Wegovy, making it the first GLP-1 pill to be cleared by regulators for obesity. More news after this.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had zero chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
We said we'd never give into a meltdown.
Okay.
And we'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Skylar, come here. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Elmo's daddy taught him that
when he has a big feeling like being frustrated, humming a song can help you feel better. Love your mind.
The Food and Drug Administration has approved Novo Nordisk's weight loss drug. This gives the Danish drug maker a leg up in the market race for launching oral weight loss medications. Here are the details.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved Novo Nordisk's weight loss pill on Monday. The 25-milligram pill is made of semaglutide, the same active ingredient in injectable Wegovy and Ozempic. The pill will be sold under the brand name Wegovy. A 64-week late-stage study showed participants who took 25 milligrams of oral semaglutide once daily lost more body weight on average than those on a placebo. The pill was approved for chronic weight management in adults with obesity or overweight and at least one related health condition. This expands the patient pool at a time when obesity-related healthcare costs are climbing. It could help open a door to tens of millions of untapped patients in a global market forecast to be worth some $150 billion a year by the next decade. The approval could help spur a turnaround for Novo after a rocky year of sliding shares and profit warnings. Its injectable Wegovy faces slowing sales amid intense competition from Eli Lilly and pressure from compounded versions. Shares of Novo jumped 8% and Lilly fell 1% in extended trading after the approval announcement. David Moore, Novo's executive vice president of U.S. operations, said a daily pill could boost interest and uptake of the drug. Analysts say the pills could make up about a fifth of the market by 2030.
Shen Yun Performing Arts has officially launched its 2026 World Tour, celebrating 20 years since their debut. Shen Yun is also bringing out an all-new production for audience members, featuring new music, choreography, and backdrops. Take a look.
Shen Yun Performing Arts wrapped up its opening week for their 2026 World Tour in Amityville, France, with 5 performances over 4 days. Through classical Chinese dance and music, Shen Yun's mission is to revive traditional Chinese culture from before communism. Audience members described their experience after watching the show.
Very fascinated, to be honest, what they are doing, how they are doing, what kind of body language they have. So actually it's really incredible to watch all of this.
The performance is very, very beautiful, truly surprising. It's extremely beautiful and very poetic. Having live music really adds a magical fairy tale quality. The stories that are presented are always benevolent.
Among those in attendance was Jean-Louis Janine Davier, a museum curator and a recipient of France's Order of Arts and Letters. He said the immersive experience of watching Shen Yun helped awaken his senses.
For me, this performance is a complete immersion. It's a journey we dreamed of taking, and it's a successful journey. A journey made successful by color. You almost feel like you can smell the lotus flowers when they are being carried and the kites soaring as though they are really taking flight. It's the music, the scents, colors, fragrances, I think awakens all my senses. You feel completely carried away, almost weightless, and it makes you wonder why we can't move with such ease or suddenly perform a triple somersault like the dancers do. They have mastered every technique, whether it's gymnastic, choreographic, or physical expression.
Shen Yun is based in New York and is celebrating its 20th anniversary since debuting in 2006. Audience members praised the themes of benevolence and divinely inspired culture presented on stage.
Shen Yun helps us understand that we need to take everything in life more lightly, more naturally, with less aggression and more love, to rise higher and not stay at low negative levels. I think we need to evolve, to transform into something beautiful, just like this performance. It's so, so good. I love it.
At the beginning, when all these divine beings from the heavens descended to earth to reunite with humanity, I was amazed by the diversity of characters. It highlights the vast possibilities representing almost every nationality, ethnicity, and deity that could watch over us. For me, this truly reflects a divine presence. I believe that without the divine, our world wouldn't exist. Across all nations, cultures, and societies, we must recognize this divine nature that guides, supports, protects, and inspires us.
Shen Yun will continue with shows in Bordeaux, France on December 27th and will start performances in the U.S. at the San Jose Center for the Performing Arts in San Jose, California on Christmas Eve. NTD News, Amneville, France.
Santa Claus and his elves have been busy putting the finishing touches on this year's Christmas gifts. Saint Nick departed from the Arctic Circle, kicking off his global journey to deliver presents. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more.
Santa Claus is on his way. Video released today showed him taking off from his hometown in the Arctic Circle. The video, made by the town's tourism organization Visit Rovaniemi, showed Santa leaving Lapland on his sleigh. The footage also captured St. Nick's elves and their last-minute preparations for this year's Christmas gifts. As Christmas Eve approaches, Santa's village in Rovaniemi is now buzzing with cheer, with thousands of visitors traveling to northern Finland for a special Christmas holiday. Children across the world are waiting eagerly for Santa to arrive and the presents he brings with him every year. But receiving a gift isn't a sure thing. That all depends on who's been naughty and who's been nice. Merry Christmas. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A powerful holiday storm is moving into Southern California, bringing the threat of flooding, mudslides, and dangerous travel conditions. What officials are warning residents to do ahead of Christmas? More news after this.